So the National Post has released, in my view, what has to be called just outrageously desperate anti-basic income propaganda. That the capitalist death cult is so desperate to make sure that the workers have no control of their life, make sure that people are living in this capitalist hellscape and are completely tied to this capitalist system. So they can't possibly allow people to have enough money to pay for food and shelter. Because if people have access to food and shelter, then you can't exploit them, right? That's the entire goal of this piece. It's coming out of the National Post. For my American audience, the National Post is like a far, ultra far right. Essentially, like it's become a National Enquirer kind of rag. But for whatever reason, amongst the people who read it, it's still treated as though it's got some respectability. It was created by like corporate criminal billionaire Conrad Black and is owned by corporate power, and they disseminate corporate talking points from their stupid think tanks like the Fraser Institute, as you'll see. Tasha Kiridan, Serb problems are bad news for proponents of a guaranteed basic income. If one truly values fairness, one should think twice about a universal basic income. So just like sowing the seeds of discontent right off the top. When Parliament returns to work in the coming weeks, one of the Liberal government's first orders of business will be a fall economic statement. Expectations include such big ticket items as national childcare, likely bankrolled by a proposed 3% tax on financial institutions and insurance companies. But the biggest question for the new government may be how long it intends to maintain pandemic support payments, and whether it will go even further towards a more permanent version of annual income support, a guaranteed basic income, as the NDP have been advocating. For 18 months now, unemployed Canadians have received unprecedented amount of government money. First, Ottawa shelled out $74 billion for the Canada Emergency Response Benefit from March to September 2020. The program then morphed into the Canada Recovery Benefit, which cost another $26 billion as of September 2021. Finally, the government extended the CERB until October 23 of this year for an additional $2.2 billion. These numbers are actually pathetically small. Like, one of the things that you have to remember about how these corporate shills talk is that they don't talk about the government and how spending actually works, right? Especially how they're using the word cost here, right? Like, we have an $8 trillion economy. We've got an $8 trillion economy, and so far they're saying, like, the program's costing $100 billion rather. And that's about what everybody says a basic income is going to end up costing annually, like $100 billion, right? So this is normal. I actually think that the Liberals should just pull the trigger on this. They would be called heroes. People would speak of them the way that we speak of, like, Pierre Elliott Trudeau when he did the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, right? Like, we think very fondly of his administration because of these sorts of things. I feel like his son could do something similarly and actually secure his legacy, which is kind of dim at the moment, if you ask me. All this cash did more than keep people afloat. It also transformed the labor market. Across Canada, employers began reporting worker shortages. Agricultural employers found that prospective employees didn't even show up for interviews. The hospitality industry reported the same phenomenon. A recent survey by the Business Development Bank of Canada of 1,251 small and medium-sized businesses found that 55% are struggling to hire the workers they need, hampering growth and forcing businesses to delay or refuse new orders. In the words of one frustrated employer, currently offering employees 65% more than the minimum wage, people don't want to work, especially in agricultural physical labor jobs, he added. If UBI comes into effect, agriculture will be a dead business. So this is what the capitalist death cult always does, right? Blame the victim, right? Oh, well, we can't find workers because there's a CERB. It certainly has nothing to do with our abusive business practices, the decades of underpaying people, the calling them lazy, the calling them stupid, the calling them all the names that we can think of. And now the second that there is a glimmer of hope that they might be freed from the wage slavery that we inflict upon them as a capitalist death cult, now we're going to complain that, oh, nobody wants to work anymore. No, bro. No one wants to work for you. No one wants to work for you because you've been abusing us. And this idea that you're sitting on, 65% more than the minimum wage, right? In Manitoba, it's an agricultural complaint, right? In Manitoba, the minimum wage is less than $12. 65% more of that doesn't even take it up to 20, right? It's barely even a living wage, right? For an agricultural seasonal job. Get fucked. Straight up get fucked. Raise your wages, or, hey, here's a crazy communist idea. Transfer the means of production into the hands of the working class and tell these worthless parasites to go the fuck away. The big reason a fall economic statement will also be so important is to see if the Liberals are willing to extend their CRB experiment to a UBI. It doesn't take much to make the leap, and it's one that some politicians badly want to make. The NDP was most vocal during the campaign with its call for a guaranteed livable income, starting with seniors and people with disabilities. Whether the party gets to use this as a bargaining chip depends on whether the Liberals can count on the Bloc, who made no mention of a guaranteed income, to support their economic measures. The Canadian government spends less on people with disabilities than the Americans do. A basic income would literally save some of these people's lives. Like, straight up. It would be a lifeline for thousands and thousands of Canadians. Hundreds of thousands more once you actually extend it into the people who aren't interested in working for the capitalist death cult any longer. But there is also support within Liberal ranks for the idea. It may not have made it into the party's platform, but at the Liberals' past convention in April 2021, 77% of delegates backed the following resolution. Given the success of the CERB program, a UBI will assist seniors and low-income Canadians to maintain an adequate standard of living, regardless of working status. Yeah, like what a government should do. That's what a government should be responsible for. That if a government has any reason for existing, it is to ensure the safety of the citizenry, and that includes housing, and that includes food. If the private sector is not doing it, which guess what? It isn't, right? It isn't. It wasn't before the pandemic, and it isn't now, and it won't after. If the government is not providing housing, food, safety, then what's the point of having a government? And what's the point of tolerating it at all? What's the point of tolerating the ruling structure and the ruling apparatus if it refuses to take care of our basic necessities of life? And to the people who say that that's just like laziness or any of that kind of dumb, childish nonsense, I would hate to be your kid. Success, however, is a dubious description. Economists at the Fraser Institute reported that 1 million young Canadians earned more per month collecting CERB and not working in 2020 than their pre-pandemic monthly outcome. So all that tells you is that the government could have always secured our shelter, but we had to sell ourselves into a capitalist death cult instead, right? And they're pretending like the capitalist death cult has any legitimacy, while I'm standing here saying, no, we can literally legislate the capitalist death cult away. We can create economic systems through the government and completely destroy this capitalist death cult to the ground. We always could and we always can. Anyone who tells you otherwise is an idiot, because even our enemies are saying it. The Fraser Institute is saying it. Instead of going and working for these fucking psychopaths who are literally trying to structure the society in order to destroy us, we could just not do that and everybody would be comfortable and everything would be fine. Other research has found that the CRB acted as a detriment for some people taking on more work. This is literally just like a single study that flies in the face of all the others. So it's a lie, is what they're doing here. Straight out, black and white. Quebec Premier Francois Legault was even more blunt. I think we have to say it. The CERB and the CRB have been a problem. There was a disincentive to go to work because we could receive a nice check easily, all while staying home. Ignore the fact that it's a fucking pandemic, dude. Like, ignore the fact that, like, oh, if you go outside and, like, go to work, you could die, right? Like, oh, just gonna completely ignore that shit. And also, again, it has to be said, what legitimacy does this system have? It has no legitimacy whatsoever. It can be dismantled and it should be dismantled, and it's easy to dismantle. Look how easy we're dismantling it, right? Look how easily we're dismantling this worthless system that doesn't work. Like, it's so simple to. We just have to, like, pull the switch. But the National Post seems convinced that the capitalist death cult has legitimacy. So it keeps talking as if what it's saying here is bad, right? That's what's odd to see. Is that there's an institution that's literally saying, we could clothe and feed and shelter everybody and it would be no hardship whatsoever for anyone and everything would be totally fine. We literally need to punch numbers into a screen and create money dollars out of nothing and everything is easy and cool, but some capitalists don't get free slave labor anymore. The capitalists don't get to abuse people and treat people like they're servants anymore. Shut up. If anything, CERB and CRB were a perfect test case about why a UBI is an idea whose time has not come. Apart from the price tag of the universal income, which the Parliamentary Budget Office pegged at $85 billion, rising to $93 billion, starting one now would hamper economic growth at the very time the growth is sorely needed. This is an embarrassing thing that they've done here, because the amount that we're spending on poverty right now is more than $100 billion, right? Shelters aren't free. Emergency care isn't free. Policing isn't free. Food banks are not free, right? When you actually break down how much we're spending to maintain the system of poverty we have in place right now, the system of desperation, the system of the destruction of the citizenry, we're paying more. Right? So this is a grift that they're running on you, and it's extremely obvious. It's extremely obvious, right? They want you to pay more to keep people homeless in the streets. They want you to pay more to keep people in the streets. Oh, is this the point they're bringing up? No, this is what they say. UBI supporters may retort that employers should simply pay workers more. But without growth, it's hard to see where those bigger paychecks will magically come from. Okay. This is just an admission straight out that they don't know how an economy works, right? If people have more money, right, they will spend that money, right? If people spend more money, there will be more business. And if you want to grow your business, you will have to hire a worker and you will have to pay them more than the shitty bullshit wage you were paying them before. And you will be able to afford that because more people have more money. Did you see the nice little circle that happened there? Right? That's called economics. Economics works in a circle, right? It's not a magical lift off into space kind of bullshit thing like the neoliberals, like the National Post pretends like it is, right? People have more money. They spend more money. You have increased business. You need more workers. You pay the appropriate wages to get them, which you can afford because why? People have more money. Understanding how economies works is important. The National Post either does not or does and is actively attempting to deceive you. Media, isn't it great that we let billionaires have control over our media apparatus? That's so cool that we just let billionaires have control over a media apparatus so they can lie to us about important policies. It's so cool. It also makes no sense to implement a UBI when governments are extending other income supports, such as childcare subsidies, because you can't do more than one thing. Right? You can't do multiple things. The capitalists don't say so. The capitalists say you got to do just one thing. Fuck you. Either governments subscribe to the efficiency argument, whereby UBI replaces a patchwork of other supports, or they continue to supply targeted aid based on individual needs and circumstances, because there's only two choices. This false dichotomy that I'm creating, which is obviously a logical fallacy to deceive gullible rubes into believing a billionaire instead of literally their own children. Literally their own children are saying to them, please, God, I'm going to be homeless. And you're saying, well, I guess I can only do one of these two things instead of both. Just do both. Just do fucking both. It's a $10 trillion economy, right? It's an $8 trillion economy. We're talking about $100 billion. This isn't going to collapse the economy. It's a total joke to think that it will, right? We are literally going to give our poor and our disabled and our elderly a lifeline, and these fucking nightmare psychopaths are complaining about it. That's what we're watching. That's what we're seeing. If one truly values fairness, one should think twice about a UBI. In a society as diverse from a geographic, economic, and industrial standpoint as Canada's, a one-size-fits-all approach to income support is actually less equitable than giving help to those who truly need it. Something for progressives to think about as the UBI debate unfolds, because these corporate psychopaths care about helping people, right? Like, what... we need to just give help to people who truly need it. Yeah, this one-size approach, no, that's not we're going to give it to people who truly need it, except you don't. Except you don't, right? The complaint that's coming out of the National Post is that the policy might accidentally go to people who don't actually need it. So what? This nickel and diming nonsense when we have an $8 trillion economy and we're talking about a policy that is $100 billion. Like, you gotta be kind of a dumb monkey at this point. You gotta be kind of a dumb monkey to be walking around being like, a basic income would be bad. Yeah, basic income would be bad somehow. Somehow I think a basic income would be bad. I know everybody would be happy and have shelter and food, but I still think it would be bad. And the only reason that they ever gave for why it would be bad is because it makes capitalists sad. So what? We're trying to dismantle this capitalist system, aren't we? We're trying to dismantle this capitalist system, aren't we? Right? We all agree that capitalism is the problem, right? It's the problem when it comes to climate change. It's the problem when it comes to poverty. It's the problem for why we can't actually build a stable society. We understand that the structure intrinsically of capitalism is fundamentally flawed and needs to be replaced. Here you go. Here's a way to start doing it. And if it makes the capitalists upset, good. Excellent. This is the end of the video, guys. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe. Please, if you've got $1 jingling around in your pocket and you feel like supporting a leftist out in the world, throw it down in my Patreon below. I could really use some extra support. Man, this is a crazy time to be alive, guys. Always remember, each and every one of you is a divine being standing around in divine energy. Don't let these billionaires gaslight you into anything else. Good luck. We're going to need it.